Welcome guys to our planar tracking podcast tutorial. This is what we're going to be working on for this tutorial, where we're going to be tracking this iPad using the Planar Tracker node inside of Nuke to put our image on the iPad. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started, and let's go over the assets that you're provided. So let's see, I think I have a script ready to go here. The assets already imported. There we go. All right. So these are the assets that you're going to get. All right, you're going to have the plate. All right, I provide you guys with the mat, so you'll already have the mat. So you're not responsible for pulling the key. If you want to pull the key, go right ahead. Feel free. I encourage you guys to try to do the key. It needs to look good, but if I see it in your script, I will give you a few extra points. So if you do attempt or want to do the key on your own, again, like I said, it needs to be a good key. But if it looks good and I see that you did it, I will give you a few extra points on your project. But it's not necessary. We do provide the map for you. I also give you guys the reflection from the iPad that we're going to incorporate, and of course the screen, what we're going to be using on the screen. All right. So let's just go ahead and start by first saving our project. So I'm going to go up to File, Save Comp As. Make sure that you guys do this first. We're going to go, I'm just going to save this on my desktop. I'm going to call it Planar Tutorial. And I'm going to put a V01. Go ahead and put a V01 in here so we can save new versions of our comps or our scripts. Okay. All right. So let's just go ahead and start tracking this shot. Okay, so let's look at this shot. If you notice, it's going to be about 48 frames long, and the resolution is at 1920 by 1080. So let me go ahead and go up to my project settings and set my resolution to match. So let's go down here, and this will be 1920 by 1080. Okay. And I'm actually just going to create the properties, get that back up there. Okay. All right, now the planar tracker, we're going to tab this in, and you'll notice that it looks like a roto node. Okay, in fact, any roto node can turn into a planar tracker. If you draw a shape, you can right click on that shape and select planar track this shape, and essentially that becomes a planar tracker. All right. Now the way the planar tracker works is it defines planes within the image. So this yields itself to working really well with stuff like this, where we have to replace a computer monitor, a laptop screen, an iPad, a billboard, something like that with a defined plane for the screen will be easy for the planar tracker to track. Now we do have one issue with this shot, most notably her hand. All right, if you notice, goes in front of the area that we want to track. Right, so we're going to need to do an additional type of planar that we call a holdout, where we just hold the hand out. So when we do start tracking the actual iPad, it will just ignore where her hand is. Okay, so that being said, we are going to need to pay attention to how we create stuff in the planar tracker. All right, so that being said, you'll notice you get a planar tracker directory, all right, and it's a purple folder, and I can name this what I want. And I can go ahead and start to draw my shapes. I'm going to draw a cusp Bezier. I'm going to draw this around the iPad, just like this. I'm just going to come around it. I'm even going to go outside the borders, right, and just kind of line this up. She doesn't move her hand too much on this side, so I'm not worried about having to do any holdouts for this hand. But definitely for this hand, we're going to need to do something because she swipes in front of it. All right, so there, I've already got my shape done, right? I'm not going to start tracking yet. We're not going to use, these are the tracking controls up here at the top. We're not going to do anything yet. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and name this screen so I know which planar this is, because I need to create another planar for the holdout for our hand. And it's very important that you do this the right way. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just turn this off and maybe lock it so I don't accidentally select it. All right, and I'm going to create another planar. All right, so let's just go up here at the top. Okay, where it says screen, we can say new track layer. Right, and you'll notice it puts a new planar track layer directory on top of my screen. And this is how I want it set up. I want to make sure that this is on top of the screen. So I'm going to call this hand so I know what it is. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a shape around my hand. Now I am going to use just a normal Bezier. And this doesn't have to be a pretty shape. You just want to get your coverage. All right. Make sure you get all this area over here too, okay? All right, and I'm just going to need to do some keyframe animation here. Whoops, let me make sure you get all the areas. Keep it relatively close to her hand, but it doesn't have to be like more like a traditional type of roto where you're right on the edge. All right, but maybe something like that, okay? And I'm starting on frame 16. That's a good kind of reference frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and set some keyframes here. I'll speed the video up or skip ahead so you guys don't have to just sit here and watch me basically roto. All right, so we're just going to go here, move this into position. Okay, so went ahead and got the keyframing done. One of the things you might want to pay attention to that I've noticed that can screw the track up is her wrist here. So make sure when you're doing the holdout, you're getting her wrist so it doesn't interfere with the planar track that we're about to do on the screen. Also, make sure there is a lot of motion blur. You're getting the blur as well. Okay, so once you've got your holdout done, we can go ahead and start tracking this other shape here. So again, I'm just scrubbing through it and kind of playing through it, making sure that everything is the way it needs to be. You'll notice the shape doesn't look that pretty. It doesn't need to. All it needs to do is just hold out that hand so I can track the iPad. So, all right, or the tablet, right? It could be an Android device, I guess. All right, so anyway. There is our screen. So let's just go ahead and select our screen. We're going to start on our first frame. That was, I believe, the frame I drew it on. Let's go ahead and unlock it here. Okay, and let's go ahead and start tracking. Now again, make sure that you have this set up the correct way. Otherwise, this won't work. So if you have the screen on top of the hand or you have this shape inside this screen directory or whatnot, if it's any way set up different than this, it won't work right. All right, this holdout will not work right, and you'll notice because your shape will get all screwed up. All right, so let's go ahead and start to track. Again, we're going to use these controls up here at the top, so don't use these down here. So let's go ahead and track to the end. Oop, there we go. And depending on how fast your computer is and what all you got running, this could take a few minutes or only a few seconds. I have a few things kind of running in the background. Of course, ScreenFlow is running, so it's going to take a little bit longer than it'll probably take for you guys, but just let it do the tracking progress. And then once this is finished, then we'll start kind of setting up or defining the area that is eventually going to be, you know, the area that we place our image onto. So again, this area here, you see how our hand's coming here, can sometimes screw up this area over here. So it's just something we need to watch out for. Again, just make sure that your holdout shapes cover her wrists so you don't run into an issue down here at the bottom. I think we're about good. Okay, good. So we've got this tracked. So now we can define again the planar surface, right? We've said this is the area that I want to put something on. So now let's just start defining and getting the perspective correct on it. Okay, so we're going to start using some of these buttons up here at the top, right? Mainly these buttons right here in the center. All right, now I can center this if I want to, so we can select this and it will always keep it kind of in the center of the frame, right? And this can be good, especially when you're doing a lot of clean plating work. Clean plating and stabilization, they kind of go together. So a lot of times when you're doing clean plate work, you're stabilizing the shot and painting and doing stuff like that. So using this feature for clean plating really works. We don't necessarily need to center this, but that's how you can do it. You can leave that on if you want. I do want to turn this on because this is going to be my planar surface. So as soon as I turn this on, you notice we're seeing this yellow square right here. And it's very important to pay attention to the color because it is yellow right now. As soon as I go to frame 2 though, you'll notice it turns to a blue color, right? Basically what this means is that when it's yellow, it's on your reference frame. And your reference frame is usually the first frame that you drew the shape on. You can designate what frame you want to be your reference frame in the properties of the planar, but typically I just leave it on the first frame that I drew, okay? So that being said, this is what we want to line up. So this is the one that we want to kind of pay attention to and line it up to exactly where the screen is, okay? Now that being said, you can't just start grabbing and moving this. It's not going to work, right? So what you need to do is you actually need to click on this button right next to it, right? That says correct plane. Now you'll notice that you can see the keyframes and you can see the points, and now we can start to move these in position. So let's just go ahead and move these. And again, I'm going to zoom in here and line these up because again, like I said, you do want to pay attention to where these are because this will determine again kind of where your image goes, where that you're going to put onto the screen. All right, so I'm just lining this up, and again, I can't see the corner here, but it's okay. What I can do is find it this way. So we come here and we straighten it here, I can find where that other corner is. So you can see I'm a little too far out. And maybe somewhere right around there. And make sure it lines up here at the bottom, and you should have that corner right there. Okay, so good. So again, just talking about the color again, now that it's yellow, again, we know that's the reference frame. All right, so you can see how I could move the plane and on the reference, right? You can see it still turns or stays yellow, right? Now, as soon as I go to the next frame, you'll see it turns blue. So if I were to grab the plane at this point and start moving it, I'm actually setting keyframes on it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When it's yellow, you can kind of set it and move it around. You're not setting any keyframes on it because it's the reference frame. It's the first frame. It's basically the frame that it uses for all other frames. It's the reference, right? But when you move to another frame, you'll notice that it turns blue. So basically the way I like to do my planars is I like to get it lined up on the first frame, and then I like to go all the way to the last frame and see how well it's done, right? And what you can do is update it at this point if you need to. So if it's a little off, you can say, okay, well, let's adjust it. You see how it turns light blue? Well, what it's going to do is now adjust all of my keys accordingly based off of this new position. So as soon as I let go, right, you see how all the keyframes kind of slid and moved into position here. And this one got a little bit off, not bad, so we're just going to move it. And you'll notice all the keyframes go shunk and kind of move into position. All right, and I think we may be good. Maybe we'll move this one just a little bit inside. There we go. All right, I think we've got our planar surface tracked. All right, so I think we've got the hard part over. Now we can start doing the fun stuff, okay? So now that I've got my planar tracked, I'm just going to keep this off to the left, and let's look at our other assets that we have for this shot, right? And while I'm at it, I'm just going to go ahead and save a new version, right? So this will be version 1. So let's just go ahead and save it. Version 1 has our planar done, and then now let's start a new version and go from here. Okay, so now we're in version 2. Okay, so again, like I said, I give you guys the mat. So there's the mat for you. Okay, we also have the screen, and we have our what is eventually, well, this is our screen. The other one was the reflection, right? So what we need to do is basically get this using the data from here onto this. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about resolutions here. All right. If you notice, our screen, or our tablet screen, is at this 1366 by 1024 resolution, right? The mat that we can use is at 1080 resolution, and the original plate is at 1080 as well. Okay, so that being said, if we start matching resolutions on the merge node, we can have some weird looking results start to happen. Okay, so we need to be careful of that. So one of the things we're going to do, the easiest way to probably do this is to do a reformat on this guy and reformat it the image resolution that our project is set at, right? So we're working at 1920 by 1080. Our plate is at 1920 by 1080. So let's just go ahead and make this 1920 by 1080. And it'll make sense here in a minute why I'm going to do this. So what I'm going to do is create a reformat, all right? And I'm going to reformat it to 1920 by 1080, but I don't want to do anything to the image. I'm not trying to scale it or stretch it or anything like that. So on the resize type, I'm going to select none. All right, and then finally I'm going to select black outside. So basically what I've done is I've just taken this image and kind of put it in this shape that's similar to this shape and this shape. So now when I start doing all my merging and whatnot, things will line up better. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and create our or extract our track from our planar. So here's our planar, right? We want to select it, right? Make sure it's highlighted, all right? And we want to export the tracking data. So we're actually going to do that right over here to the very far right in your planar tracking properties in the viewer, right? So if we go here, you can see we have a few different things that we can export, right? So we can do corner pins, relative, absolutes, or stabilize, which is just kind of basically the inverse. We can also do them baked, so these are not expression based, but we actually have the data baked into the node itself. Or we can create trackers, right? And we can have 4 different point trackers that we can use for whatever we need it for corner pins, or maybe we want to parent those to roto shapes, or whatever we wanted to do, we could use those for, right? Now the one that we're going to use is the corner pin absolute. All right, so basically what the corner pin absolute is going to do is it's going to take this guy and try to force it to match what we're seeing in the plate here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put this on and see what happens. Now remember, we're doing this weird reformat, right? And then we're going to put the corner pin in and see what that does. Okay, now you'll notice it kind of made it look a weird type of aspect ratio. It's almost like it squished the image. And of course, if I were to, let's see, merge this, let's just merge this real quick over the background, you're going to notice it doesn't line up at all. Okay, looks something like this, right? This is not what we want. All right, so what's going on here? Well, the way the corner pin works is it needs to know, in order to do the pin or the stretch or the skew, it needs to know a little bit of information about the image that it's getting on the input pipe. All right, so more specifically, where are the edges? So where are you wanting to grab the stuff from, or the edges from? See, it's doing the twos, or where it's putting it, but we also have this from tab, and this from tab is saying, well, I'm grabbing it from this 1920 by 1080 resolution. Well, in reality, we really want it to grab it from these points here, right, on the image. Okay, well, this is the edges of our image right here. This is where we want to grab the corner pin from and apply it to this area here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the corner pin, all right, but we're going to disable the corner pin. So let's hit D on the keyboard, disable it. All right, and then we're going to go to the from tab in the corner pin, and we're going to line up our froms. All right, so we're going to say this from 4, this needs to be right on this top left corner. This from 3 on this top right corner. And we'll zoom in here and kind of really fine tune them. From 1, bottom left, from 2, bottom right. Okay, so doing it this way will make sure that it lines up correctly. All right, from 3, from 2, this is the corner that it's grabbing it from, and then finally from 1. Okay, so now we've got an image that's in the resolution that we need it in that has the corner pin set correctly. So now if I turn this on, all right, now it lines up, right? You see the aspect ratio looks right. I can put this over and we're lined up, all right? But you'll notice, oh, it's over her hand, okay? So 2 different ways we could do this, depending on how we want to merge this together. I could add this in to the plate, right? This is our mat, right? And it's in the red channel. Let's go ahead and close the corner pin. So the red channel, right? So I could create a copy node, hit K on the keyboard. We can say, okay, let's copy that red channel from this guy, put it in the alpha channel of our plate. So if I load this in the viewer, hit A on the keyboard, now it has an alpha. Of course, once we do that, we need to pre-molt to get our transparency. And then we can put this on an A input. Shift A, and put this on A, so A goes over B, right? And we can do it that way, right? And you notice we're getting the hand, everything looks correct, right? That's one way we could do it, and that would totally work, right? But what we're doing is we're putting the plate over this image here, okay? Maybe we didn't want to do it that way. Maybe we want the image on A, and we want the plate on B. Probably the most obvious reason why you would want to do it like this is, let's say you have channel data in this image that you want to retain throughout the stream of your composite. Well, that's always going to be on the B input of your stream, or the second input of your stream. So data falls or goes through the stream of your composite on the B input pipes, not the A. So let's say we had data that we wanted to flow through our composite, so this needs to be on B. So what we would do at that point is basically the same thing. From here, we would take this guy. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this because we don't need it now, right? So we're going to do another copy here. We're going to hit K on the keyboard, copy. We're going to say, let's grab that red channel and put it in here. But now what we need to do is invert the mat, because the mat right now is backwards for what we want to do. In fact, if I pre-molt this, this is what it looks like, right? It's backwards. So all we need to do is, after the copy node, tab in and invert, and let's invert that alpha channel. And now we got something that looks like this, right? And this is what we need. So now we can put this on an A input. So we'll do A over B, which is the original plate, right? Again, the same effect, we're just doing it a little bit differently. And now I have my plate on the B pipeline. So again, if I had any data that I needed to keep throughout the stream of the composite in this guy, you could go through and do it that way. So that being said, however you guys set this up, it's fine. It's up to you. You can do both ways. You can do either way. If I see either way in the script, in your composite, it's fine. Okay, just two different ways to kind of do it, and the reasoning why you would kind of want to do it that way. Okay, so that being said, let's look and see where we're at here. Right? You might be noticing there is a whole lot of green, right? Especially right there on the motion blur. Okay, that's because we're getting the spill, or the transparency, where we're kind of seeing the green screen from the original plate. So what we're going to do is de-spill the plate. You can also see we've got some green here on her cheek. All right, so we can use a hue correct. Hue correct's used for spill, or we can use a key light node. A key light node works actually really well for spill. So if we create a key light, you'll notice a key light has a bunch of inputs on it. Right, we're just going to plug it right in. All right, and do something like this. Okay, so make sure it's plugged into the source, and watch what we're going to do with this. We're just going to load this in the viewer, and instead of trying to pull a key, I'm just going to go into the green channel under screen color and type in 1, and we will remove that spill. Okay, so let me show you that in the composite. Let's turn it off. You can see it. You can see the spill that we have, and I'm going to disable it, turn it, or re-enable it, so turn it on. There we go. My quick keys will work. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's with it on. Right, so that's with it on, and that's with it off. Right. So good. So you'll notice we're getting some kind of weird, ugly looking type of edge stuff here happening. It's not so bad when it's, still, but it's really bad when we kind of see the motion blur. So one of the things we can do is maybe use something different than a merge. We can use what's called an add mix. An add mix just gives you a little bit more control over how you mix or merge A over B. So for example, if I were to disconnect this and put A over B, first thing you're going to see is it's going to look really dark and ugly. And that's because the add mix needs to know if the A input is pre-multiplied or not, okay? Which ours is, so you need to say yes, it is pre-multiplied. But look, you can see we have our curves, all right? And we can adjust how we can how these edges blend together. So for example, if I go into the A, which is my hand, and I go into the midtones, do Option Command, create a new point, and kind of start lifting this up, watch what it does to my edge. See how it's making it kind of disappear? And if I go the other way with it, look what it starts to do. It starts to kind of bring it in so it becomes a little bit more apparent, right? And you can see if I keep going, yeah, it's going to start to look really nasty, right? And we can do the same on the other side, right? So I could say, let's bring this down a little bit. Let's go into B and start bringing this up a little bit. And let's see here. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Something got screwed up. That's fine. Okay, so I'm bringing it down in B, and now for some reason it's not giving me control over B. There we go. Okay, so there's B. All right. So you see I had to highlight it. For some reason it was not giving it to me. And man, it made me do that again. Okay, sorry guys. I'm getting, when my computer starts to lag, I start to kind of move faster than it's processing. All right, so if I start bringing this up, you can start to see what it's starting to do to the outer and inner edge. Okay, so again, just gives us a little bit more control over how we blend those two together, right? One more thing I might want to do if I really wanted to brighten these up is you could also add something like a little bit of light wrap to kind of help hide some of that blurring. And of course, we could always work on the matte to try to get maybe a better motion key, or yeah, motion blur key. Okay, well, let's say that's pretty good for now. That's where we want to be. All right, so the next thing we need to do is go ahead, let's do our coloring, right? We need to kind of match or integrate this into the background, right? So the very first thing I'm going to do to this image is add a grade node. So let's go ahead and create a grade node, load it in the viewer, hitting 1. And let's just go ahead and define what should be black and white in the image. Well, what's white is pretty obvious. This should be probably white. So we're going to click the eyedropper for the white point. I'm going to hold down Option Command. Remember, we need to make sure we hold down Option. Go ahead and select my white point. All right. Now for my black point, let's scrub ahead. Now you might be thinking that maybe this is your black point, but honestly, this is just nothing. This is empty. This is not really what we want to use for our black point. Let's find something here. Probably this guy would be our black point. So let's pick our eyedropper for this, Option Command and click, and there's our black point for our background. So our lift and our gain will just be our black and our white point for our background plate, what we're trying to match. Let's go back to our composite, and in the lift, we're going to, again, since the background plate does not pass through the grade node, I don't need to hold down Option. I'm just going to hold down Command. And we're going to find a black point, probably the iPad itself or the tablet. I'm just going to sample maybe one of these areas here. All right. And the white point, we're going to do the gain. And the way I like to do the white point is just kind of hold down Command and just kind of drag around until I find something that looks relatively good. It gives me a good starting point. So maybe somewhere around here up at the top for my white point. You got to be careful of anything like specular highlights or sampling something that's not pure white, that's not a true white in the scene, where you have values that are clipped. That's not what you're looking for. Okay, so maybe something like that. Of course, we've got the multiply, offset, and gamma. So if I need to further color correct this, if it's still a little too bright for me, I can maybe drop it down just a little bit on the multiply. Of course, if it looks like it has a little bit too much contrast in it, I can maybe up the gamma just a little bit. Okay. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a defocus on it. It's a little sharp. So after my corner pen, I'm going to do a defocus. So you can just see kind of the nature of how I've kind of set this up. I've done my coloring first, I've done my transformation second, and I've done my filtering third. All right, so defocus to 2. Maybe, yeah, that makes it look a little bit better. All right, and now let's go ahead and get the reflection in. Let's just go ahead and merge this as a screen, or we can do a plus. And I'm going to mix this in to taste, because you'll notice as soon as you do this, because of the nature of how I did this, it kind of just makes everything look gray. So pretty much all that color correction I just did, it just kind of makes it look bad. So what we're going to do is on this actual reflection, Let's create a grade node, so G on the keyboard. Let's just adjust the gamma on it a bit. So we still get the reflection, but we're not getting that kind of milky kind of look that it was giving us before. We can still see that we're getting the reflection of her hand as she's bringing it up. All right, good. So not doing bad, almost there. So last thing we want to do is just go ahead and get our lens effects done. Okay, so if you notice in the plate, we do have chromatic aberration here. If you look, you scroll in, you can see we're getting the magenta. It's also very apparent on her glasses, right? So let's go ahead and try to match that, all right? So what we're going to do, we're actually going to do it here, all right? I need to do it here because I don't want to apply it to everything here, so I'm just moving this stuff out of the way here. And we could do it after the pre-molt. Let's put it here. Now what I'm going to do is create a transform masked, right? And again, because this is just kind of let this in the viewer. Because this is magenta, right? We need to make sure that we turn off the green channel. So we're just going to shift the red and the blue, and we need to make sure we do this with our scale. More specifically, just the width. We don't want to scale both the width and the height, and we don't want to use translation, right? We want to scale from the center of our image to kind of mimic how chromatic aberration works, because chromatic aberration gets progressively worse as we start getting kind of closer to the edges of the frame, right? Okay, so I'm going to do this very small. Let's do 0.05. All right, you can see that's way too much. Let's kind of do 0.05. Let's try that. Okay, still a little too much, but we're getting kind of closer there. 0.03. Maybe that's looking a little bit better. All right, a little bit too much for me. Let's go one more. 0.02. Ah, there we go. Again, you don't want it to be distracting. That's not the point of it. In fact, that's not the point of anything in a composite. If any one thing that you're doing is distracting from the overall shot, it's too much, right? So it's just, it needs to be there for the integration. All right, so now that we've got the chromatics in, let's go ahead and add in our grain. Now the way I'm going to do the grain, I'm actually going to clone our original plate and our map. We're going to use this guy again. All right, and I'm going to do a denoise on this. I'm going to tab in a denoise and make sure that you guys are using Nuke so you can use the denoise. All right, and the way this works is you need to sample an area for it to get the grain. So what we're going to sample is obviously the area that we're replacing this green screen. Right, so there's that green screen. All right, instead of outputting the result though, we're going to output the noise. Okay, so now I'm just going to isolate this area. Again, there's multiple ways I could do this. All right, let's say I wanted to do this in a merge. So you plug this on A, you could plug this on B. You could set this up like this, and you could say out. All right, well, first, of course, we need this to be in the alpha channel. All right, so make sure it's in the alpha, and then you could set this to out, right? And you could get your noise pattern that way. You could flip this around, so I could flip that, invert this, set it to an inside, and basically do the same way. All right, maybe you don't want these on these inputs, so you want them on A and B, or you want them flipped. Then you could use the mask and matte operations, right, which would pretty much give you the same thing for the same reasoning. Maybe you needed one on one input and one on the other. But the way I want you guys to do it is just like how we did it before. So we're going to copy this in. We're going to say grab the red channel, copy it into the alpha. Let's go ahead and invert that after the copy. So invert that alpha and then pre-molt. Now, after we've done this, the one thing that we still need to do is we need to remove the green spill. So I'm going to copy this key light, Command-C, Command-V. All right, and we're going to place it, all right, right after our denoise, so right here. Okay, so now we've removed the green, and we're going to add this back into the plate. So we're doing all our A inputs on the right, so let's stay consistent here. All right. So here's my B input, my A input on the right. Now again, let's set this merge to a plus. And then let's kind of mix it into taste. So a good area to kind of mix this in fact, here's the grain. You can kind of see it real good right here. So let's go to one of those areas when it flips and all we're seeing is black. So maybe right around here. And now we can start to kind of add in the grain. There we go. See if we can start to match it up. And I am going to tweak this reflection because it's just throwing this off a little too much. It's tough because it's a little bit of my lift is doing it. So let's go into my lift. All right. And I'm actually going to bring this down. There we go. I'm just tweaking, trying to get something that looks a little bit better. The thing is about the iPad's going to have its own brightness values. It's going to have, you can be looking at something that's a little bit different. So what we're just trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is just get it to look like it sits in the shot and it works. All right. But I think that's good. I think we're done. I think I'm going to call this project done. So this is what I want to see kind of set up in your script, right? So make sure you have everything kind of lined out. You can kind of put your planer over here. If you want to organize everything, that's fine, but you're going to do your track, right? Spill correction, this is getting the screen incorporated on, adding the reflection in, and then finally doing the grain and doing the final shot. So let's go ahead and render it out. So we're going to hit W on the keyboard, create a write node, and we'll give this a name. So let's go to my desktop. Now, again, guys, check the LMS to make sure you're naming it the way I have it written for the LMS. So I'm just going to call this Planar Tutorial VO2.mov. Again, make sure you put that extension in. Okay, now the codec that we're going to use is our 264 codec. Hit OK, and we're going to render frames 1 to 48. And go ahead and let that do its thing. Alright, so let's go ahead and check it. Go to my desktop here. There is my Planar Track tutorial movie. Double click it, and there we go. Alright, so good. Alright, so that is the project. So go ahead and get that submitted. I'll need your script and your movie file. So hope you guys enjoyed the lesson and you learned something on how, the basics on how to use the Planar Tracker. So until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.